I never thought a Tuesday morning in Portland, Oregon would be the day my entire world shifted. But there I was, standing in the cramped kitchen of my studio apartment in Southeast Division Street, staring at my phone screen while my instant ramen cooled on the counter. The message was from my sister, Rebecca. 3 words that made my hands shake. Mom needs you. I hadn't spoken to my parents in almost 4 years. Not since that Thanksgiving dinner in 2020 when my father looked across the table at me, his fork hovering over his plate of turkey, and said the words that still echoed in my mind every single day. You'll never amount to anything, Jordan. You're throwing your life away with this art nonsense. You could have been a doctor like your mother. You could have saved lives. But instead, you're painting pictures nobody will ever buy. My mother sat silent that day. She didn't defend me. She didn't tell him to stop. She just looked down at her cranberry sauce and let him tear me apart, piece by piece, until I finally stood up, grabbed my jacket, and walked out of their Laurelhurst home. I was 23 then. Now I'm 27, working 3 jobs to keep my dream alive. I teach art classes to kids at the Portland Art Museum on weekends. I wait tables at Jake's famous crawfish downtown 4 nights a week. And during the day, I paint in my tiny apartment, hoping that one day someone will see what I see in the colors and brushstrokes. My phone buzzed again. Rebecca. She's been sick for months. Kidney failure. Stage 5. They didn't want to tell you, but Jordan, it's bad. Really bad. She needs a transplant. I sat down on my second-hand couch, the one I'd found on Craigslist for $50. My chest felt tight. Me? Why are you telling me this? Rebecca. Because you're her daughter. Because despite everything, she asks about you. She misses you. I laughed bitterly. Missed me? The woman who let her husband call me a failure? The woman who chose silence over standing up for her own child? Me? I'm sorry she's sick. I really am. But I don't think there's anything I can do. Rebecca, there is. We all got tested. Dad, me, Uncle Mark, Aunt Teresa. None of us are matches. The doctor said we need to expand the family testing. You're her last hope. I stared at those words for a long time. Last hope. How ironic. I was the family disappointment, the one who would never save lives, and now they needed me to potentially save hers. The rain started falling outside my window, typical Pacific Northwest weather. I watched the drops race down the glass and thought about my mother. I thought about her laugh, the way she used to sing while making breakfast when I was little. I thought about how she taught me to mix colors when I was 5, showing me how blue and yellow made green. She was the one who bought me my first real set of oil paints for my 10th birthday. Somewhere along the way, she stopped seeing me. Or maybe she never stopped, and that's what hurt the most. Maybe she saw me clearly and decided I wasn't worth defending. My phone rang. Rebecca's name flashed on the screen. I answered. Jordan, she said, her voice cracking. I know this is asking a lot. I know what they said to you, what Dad said. But she's our mom. She's dying. The dialysis isn't working anymore. She has maybe 6 months without a transplant. I closed my eyes. 6 months. Have you told Dad you're calling me? There was a pause. No, he doesn't know. He thinks we've exhausted all options. He's talking about going on the National Registry, but the wait time is years. She doesn't have years, Jordan. What does Mom say? Does she want me to get tested? Rebecca's voice got quieter. She cries every night. She keeps your old paintings in her closet. The ones from high school. She takes them out and looks at them. She never stopped believing in you, Jordan. She didn't know how to stand up to Dad. That broke something in me. Not the anger, but something deeper. Something I'd been holding on to like armor. I'll get tested, I said quietly. But Rebecca, I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. Not because they suddenly think I'm worth something. I know, my sister whispered. Thank you. I hung up and sat in the silence of my apartment. Outside, Portland moved on with its day. Cars splashed through puddles on Hawthorne Boulevard. The coffee shop below my apartment filled with the lunch crowd. Life continued, but mine had just taken a turn I never saw coming. I grabbed my jacket and headed out into the rain, walking toward the hospital where my mother had spent her career saving others. Now maybe, just maybe, the daughter she thought would never save lives might save hers. The OHSU hospital sat on Marquam Hill like a fortress of glass and steel, overlooking downtown Portland. I'd driven past it 1,000 times but never imagined I'd be walking through those doors for this reason. The testing coordinator, a woman named Sharon with kind eyes and graying hair, led me to a small examination room. She explained the process while drawing vial after vial of blood from my arm. We're testing for HLA markers, tissue compatibility, blood type, she said, labeling each tube with practiced efficiency. The results take about a week. If you're a match, we'll do more extensive testing to make sure you're healthy enough to donate. I nodded, watching my blood fill the tubes. Dark red, almost purple in the fluorescent lights. Have you thought about what this means? Sharon asked gently. Kidney donation is major surgery. 6 to 8 weeks recovery time. There are risks. I know, I said, but I have to try. She smiled at me then, something warm and understanding in her expression. Your mother is lucky to have you. I wasn't sure about that. Lucky would have been having a mother who defended you. Lucky would have been having parents who supported your dreams instead of crushing them. When I left the hospital, I didn't go home. I drove to Waterfront Park and sat on a bench near the Salmon Street Springs fountain, watching the water dance in patterns. A homeless man played guitar nearby, his case open for donations. I dropped a $5 bill in, all I could spare. My phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. Hello? Jordan. It was my father's voice. Deep, authoritative, the voice that had commanded operating rooms for 30 years. Rebecca told me what you did. My heart hammered. I waited. I want you to know, he continued, his tone stiff, formal, that regardless of the outcome, this doesn't change anything between us. You're still making poor life choices. You're still wasting your potential. But your mother needs help, and I suppose even you can be useful for something. The words hit me like physical blows. Even now, even when I was potentially saving his wife's life, he couldn't just say thank you. He couldn't just acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, I had value. Dad, I said quietly, my voice shaking, I'm not doing this for you. I'm not doing this to prove anything to you. I'm doing this because it's right. Because Mom is still my mother. Even if you both gave up on me. We didn't give up on you, Jordan. You gave up on yourself when you chose poverty and failure over a real career. Something inside me snapped. You know what, Dad? I said, standing up from the bench, my free hand clenched into a fist. I'd rather be poor and doing what I love than rich and miserable like you. I'd rather paint pictures that nobody buys than spend my life cutting people open and going home empty inside. How dare you? I hung up. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone into the fountain. 6 days later, Sharon called. Jordan, we have your results. I was in the middle of teaching a watercolor class to a group of 8-year-olds at the museum. I excused myself and stepped into the hallway, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. And, you're a perfect match. 6 out of 6 HLA markers. Your blood type is O negative, same as your mother. Jordan, this is remarkable. The chances of a parent-child match being this perfect are less than 25%. You're exactly what she needs. I leaned against the wall, suddenly dizzy. Perfect match. The daughter they said would never save lives was a perfect match. What happens now? We need you to come in for more testing. Physical exam, chest x-ray, psychological evaluation. We need to make sure you're completely healthy and that you understand what you're committing to. Can you come in tomorrow morning? Yes. Yes, I'll be there. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, watching car headlights sweep across the plaster. My phone sat silent on the nightstand. No call from my mother. No message. Just silence. Rebecca texted me around midnight. They told Mom. She cried for an hour straight. She wants to see you. I stared at those words. For years of silence. And now she wanted to see me. Me, when? Rebecca, tomorrow. After your testing. She's at the hospital for dialysis anyway. Room 437. The next morning I went through test after test. EKG, blood pressure, kidney function, lung capacity. Every doctor and nurse who examined me said the same thing with slight variations. You're doing an incredible thing. Your mother is very fortunate. This is the ultimate act of love. But was it love? Or was it just the inability to let someone die when you had the power to save them, even if they'd hurt you beyond measure? After the final test, I stood outside room 437 for 10 minutes before I could make myself knock. "Come in," a weak voice called. I opened the door. My mother looked so small in that hospital bed. She'd always been petite, barely 5'2", but now she seemed fragile, breakable. Her skin had a grayish tint, and dark circles shadowed her eyes, and 4 dripped steadily into her arm. When she saw me, her face crumpled. "Jordan," she whispered. "Oh, Jordan, my baby." I stood frozen in the doorway, every emotion I'd buried for 4 years rising to the surface at once. If you're watching this and hoping for what happens next, take a moment and subscribe to the channel. Sometimes the hardest journeys lead to the most unexpected destinations, and this story is just beginning to unfold. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. Whatever happened next would change both of us forever. Mom tried to sit up straighter, wincing with the effort. I moved instinctively to help her, adjusting the pillows behind her back. Our hands touched briefly, and she grabbed mine, holding on like I might disappear. "I'm so sorry," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Jordan, I'm so sorry for everything. For not standing up for you. For letting your father say those things. For making you feel like you weren't enough." I pulled my hand away gently, taking the chair beside her bed. The words I'd rehearsed 1,000 times in my head over the years suddenly felt inadequate. "Why didn't you defend me?" My voice cracked. "I was your daughter. I needed you to tell him he was wrong. Just once, Mom. Just once I needed you to choose me." She closed her eyes, fresh tears spilling over. "Your father, he comes from a different world. His parents were immigrants. They sacrificed everything for him to become a doctor. In his mind, success only looks one way. And I was too weak to fight him. I grew up believing wives supported their husbands no matter what, that keeping peace was more important than speaking truth. That's not an excuse. I know." She opened her eyes and looked directly at me. "I know it's not. I failed you, Jordan. I failed as a mother. But I need you to know something. Every single day since you left, I've regretted my silence. Every painting you made that I kept, every art show announcement I found online, every time I saw your name listed as an instructor at the museum, my heart burst with pride. I just didn't have the courage to tell you. Then why didn't you call? Why didn't you reach out? Because I was ashamed. Because I didn't know how to face you after what I'd allowed. Because your father said if I contacted you, I was choosing sides, and I couldn't bear to lose both of you." We sat in silence for a moment. Outside the window, a helicopter landed on the hospital roof. Life and death decisions happening every second. Mom took a shaky breath. "The doctors told me you're a perfect match. That you're willing to give me your kidney. Jordan, I can't accept it. Not after what we did to you. Not after how we made you feel." Something shifted in my chest then. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something close to understanding. She wasn't the villain I'd painted in my mind for 4 years. She was just a flawed human being, trapped between love and fear, who'd made terrible choices. "You don't get to decide that," I said quietly. "I'm doing this because I can. Because you're my mother, and despite everything, I don't want you to die. But Mom, after this, things have to change. If I give you this kidney, you have to give me something too. Anything," she whispered. "You have to start living honestly. You have to stop letting fear make your decisions. And you have to tell Dad that I matter, that my life matters, whether he approves of it or not." She nodded, sobbing openly now. "I will. I promise, Jordan. I will." The surgery was scheduled for 3 weeks later, giving me time to prepare physically and mentally. I had to gain 5 pounds, stop taking ibuprofen, and attend mandatory counseling sessions to ensure I understood the risks. Rebecca came to every appointment with me. She held my hand during the final pre-op testing and brought me Thai food from my favorite restaurant on Belmont Street the night before surgery. "You're braver than I ever could be," she said, watching me push pad Thai around my plate. "I couldn't do what you're doing. You would if you had to. No, Jordan. You're doing this after everything they put you through. That's not bravery, that's grace. That's something Dad never taught us. The morning of surgery, I woke up at 4 in the morning. The hospital was quiet, sterile, filled with that antiseptic smell that clings to everything. They prepped me in a cold pre-op room, starting in 4, checking vitals, asking the same questions over and over. My mother was in the room next door, going through the same process. Then my father appeared in the doorway. He looked older than I remembered, grayer. The lines around his eyes deeper, his shoulders slightly hunched. He stood there awkwardly, his hands in his pockets. "May I come in?" I nodded, unable to speak. He approached slowly, like I was a wild animal that might bolt. When he reached my bedside, he did something I'd never seen him do in my entire life. He cried. "I was wrong," he said, his voice breaking completely. "Jordan, I was so wrong about you. About everything. I thought success meant money and prestige and letters after your name. I thought I was protecting you from poverty and struggle. But I was really just afraid. Afraid of what? That you'd be happy doing something I never had the courage to do. That you'd follow your passion while I spent 40 years doing what my parents expected of me. I became a surgeon because that's what immigrant success looked like, not because I loved it. And when I saw you choosing differently, choosing joy over security, it terrified me. Because it showed me everything I'd sacrificed for nothing." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, a gesture so human it made my own tears fall. "You were right that day at the fountain. I am empty inside. I've spent my whole life cutting people open and fixing their bodies while ignoring my own soul. But you, Jordan, you chose your soul. You chose meaning. And I called that failure because I couldn't face my own." "Dad," I whispered. He took my hand, something he hadn't done since I was a little girl. "When you wake up from this surgery, when you've given your mother life, I want you to know something. You've already saved more lives than I ever will. You saved hers. And today, watching you do this with such courage and grace, you saved mine too. You showed me what real strength looks like." The anesthesiologist entered then, ready to take me to the operating room. My father kissed my forehead. "I love you, Jordan. I'm sorry it took me so long to say it. I'm sorry it took almost losing you both to see what was right in front of me. I love you too, Dad." 18 months later, I stood in the Pearl District Gallery on Northwest 13th Avenue, surrounded by my paintings. The opening night of my first solo exhibition. The walls glowed with color, canvases depicting the raw beauty of human resilience, family, forgiveness, and second chances. The centerpiece was a large oil painting titled "Perfect Match." It showed two hands reaching toward each other across a vast space, their fingertips just touching, light emanating from the point of contact. One hand bore the scars of surgery, the other wore a hospital bracelet. Both were painted in shades of healing. My mother stood beside me, healthy and radiant, her color returned, her energy restored. She wore a blue dress I'd never seen before and held a glass of champagne she wasn't supposed to drink, but took tiny sips of anyway when the doctors weren't looking. "This one is my favorite," she said softly, gazing at Perfect Match. "Captures everything perfectly." A man in an expensive suit approached us, a red dot sticker in his hand. "Excuse me, are you the artist?" "I am." He placed the red dot on the painting's information card. "Sold." He smiled warmly. "This piece speaks to something profound. My daughter and I have been estranged. Seeing this tonight, well, it's given me courage to make things right. Thank you." After he walked away, my mother squeezed my hand. "See? You are saving lives. Just like I always knew you would. Just in your own beautiful way." My father appeared then, looking uncomfortable in his blazer but genuinely trying. He'd been attending therapy, working on himself, learning to express emotions he'd buried for decades. We had lunch every Sunday now, awkward at first but getting easier. 32 paintings sold, he announced, pride evident in his voice. 32, Jordan. The gallery owner told me collectors from Seattle and San Francisco are here. Rebecca rushed over with her husband and their new baby, my nephew I'd gotten to watch being born 6 months ago. "The Portland Tribune is here," she said excitedly. "They want to interview you about the upcoming feature story." The story wasn't just about my art. It was about the journey. about being called a failure and proving that success has infinite definitions, about giving an organ to someone who hurt you and finding healing in the giving, about families breaking and mending and learning to love imperfectly but honestly. As the gallery filled with people admiring my work, purchasing pieces that would hang in their homes and offices, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Complete peace. If you've stayed with me until the end of this journey, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment telling me what forgiveness means to you, and subscribe to the channel for more stories about the resilience of the human spirit. Your suggestions for future stories are always welcome. Sometimes the people who doubt us the most end up witnessing our greatest triumphs. Sometimes saving a life saves your own soul. And sometimes, just sometimes, the child they said would never amount to anything becomes exactly who they were always meant to be.